Hello everyone, welcome to the orientation session for the robot framework training along with Selenium and Python. So primarily what we're going to do today is understand what is a robot framework, how we're going to learn Selenium concepts with it, along with Python as a programming language. This brand new course that we are trying to offer from ITeLearn is going to take you to the next league, which is going to be a very popular framework and an in-demand tool into the market. So what you see as a robot framework and what you see as Selenium WebDriver along with Python are something that we're going to cover in today's session very briefly as to what they are. So to start with team, RobotFramework.org is our number one priority in this specific training course. This framework has been evolved over a period of a few years with the help of a lot of different contributors around the world coming together and talking primarily about how we create a generic test automation framework more towards acceptance testing and acceptance test driven development. So this is talking about how users contribute towards where we can do more in terms of how we do testing as a user acceptance. When an end user gets to the testing level, how do we do that testing? So I'm going to create a new document here and I'm going to call this as an orientation session document. And in this, we'll talk a lot about these specific features team. Robot framework. Number one, it's a popular framework today. It's open source, so there's no license fee for it. And the fact that it uses Selenium WebDriver along with Python programming. All right. So what it primarily does is it gives us the feel of how we do a keyword-driven testing along with a data-driven model within it. So it combines how we do data-driven framework and a keyword-driven framework combined into one agreed framework that's got some amazing reporting features into it. This document I'll also share with you team as we go along. Data-driven concepts, keyword-driven, and user acceptance testing. So when it comes to data-driven concepts, it's very simple team. What we do with a data-driven concept and how we do with a keyword-driven, I'm just going to quickly explain to you all. It's going to be easy for you to understand. So when it comes to a data-driven concept, primarily what happens is you have a test case or a test scenario, which has a few steps that we want to execute. A user goes about executing a few steps. But this test case has many sets of test data that we want to test it against. So we have a test data set 1, then we have a test data set 2, then we have 3 and till n. So how do we make sure that a given test case is taking multiple inputs of test data and how it's going to behave when the test data keeps changing? That becomes our data-driven framework. All right. Or in short form, we call this as DDF. When it comes to a keyword-driven framework, what we do is we take multiple sets of test cases. Each of the test cases have different steps to do. Let's say this is one test case, and then we have another test case similarly. and a few more test cases. So we are talking about a concept where we have a common keyword library, and in that we talk about what are the different common keywords that we use as a user. Things like open a browser, things like enter text into an edit field, click a button, or verify for a text to be present. And then let's say we want to click another link that is there, and then we want to close a browser. So each test case uses a variety or a combination of these keywords, and how we call them repeatedly so it's easy for anyone to understand as to what we are trying to do out here. So the way we write a keyword driven approach is very simple. It goes in a matter of things like this. When it comes to robot framework, we have created this to become a very simple way of presenting. So if you look at this specific diagram, let me save this as, I think it's already there, but do I have a robot framework here? It should be there. It's talking the complete thing. It's not saving as a thing, but basically it talks about a very simple script. Can you all see the screen, team? Or is the text too small in this? Can you see it now? All right. So let's go to this. Which one? The first one. Let's hope this doesn't keep moving. So it has a very simple layout saying that what are the settings that we have. And then when we write the test cases, it's a very English-like speaking test case within Robot Framework. It says for a test case called valid login, what is it that we want to do? We want to open a browser to login page. We want to input a username called demo. We want to input a password called mode. And then we want to submit our credentials that we've entered. And then we want to say that welcome page should be open. And then finally close browser. So for someone who's not a technically strong person or someone who's not into the programming side of aspects, this becomes a very simple way of creating an automation testing suite or test case. Robot Framework gives us that ability to write simple tests that can be elaborated to become a very powerful test using these simple kind of a layout presentations. What it does advancedly over what I've shown you is it gives us an amazing set of test reports that talk about how many tests did we run, out of these tests how many passed, how many failed, and how long each test took. And it tells me as a meter as to how many passed, how many failed, and so on. Then when I look at log files, it gives me exactly the test execution log as to within that specific test that we ran, what test case passed, what failed, how it failed, where it failed with a screenshot, and so on. This gives us that amazing ability to be able to understand at a very detailed level what is happening. Then it also tells us exactly how we can pass parameters. Let's say if I say invalid username, then I can say what is the username, password for that. In this case, we're talking test cases. So let's say login with invalid credentials should fail is a keyword that we want to repeat. In that case, I'd say input username and then we pass a username and a password into it when we call it. So input username will enter the username, password, submit the credentials and the fact that login should have failed. What is this English-like word called login should have failed is nothing but a user-created keyword which says that location should be so and so, what is the URL, and the title of the page should be so and so. This is how we try and create additional keywords around it. So the whole concept of robot framework is to try and create one, just giving a different color to it. We say that we'll create a list of keywords that talk about, let's say user login, I say, is a list of keyword. It has a few steps with it. And I say incorrect user login. What will happen at that time? Okay. And then I can say user log out. All right. And I'll say edit profile for a user. These are different keywords that you can build at a very user-friendly level. When it comes to user acceptance testing, it is always about how an end user is going to use this application, and we try and test it like that. Most probably it's going to be a business user or a business consultant or a business analyst who's going to do UAT to try and see how our application is right now. So this helps us to create new test cases or test scenarios, if we can call it, or test suite, where we call, let's say, user login and then editor profile and then user logout. This becomes step 1, 2 and 3 for me. How do we very easily build them together and put them as one specific test case or test suite that the user can pick and execute? So while it looks very simple, as the robot framework says that here is what a robot framework is all about, it becomes very complicated when you want to implement it. For this, what we need are some basic concepts. So data-driven framework concept is take a given test case or scenario and test it for different sets of test data. All right. This becomes a data-driven concept. When it comes to keyword-driven, as I briefly said, is combine one or more reusable user steps to make a keyword, like user login, user logout, or edit profile, or complete purchase of an item if it comes to e-commerce sites and so on and so on. So we combine them into sets of keywords and call reusable keywords as needed in our new test cases. So what I'm trying to show you here, team, is that fact that it's a very simple process of how we do something that is a data-driven concept where we change the data that we send, or keyword-driven concept where we say that a few keywords are passed in and how the application behaves for each of this. But like I said, user acceptance testing is a non-technical based testing. Someone who can emulate or simulate, whatever you can call it, an end user and write test cases in a simple user-like English. So they want to be able to write these tests in a very easy format. The fact that this is also an open source and it has become popular across many organizations across the world, and the fact that it's open source has got multiple job opportunities. So what this does is once you have this on your resume, you will find many more job opportunities coming your way and asking that, hey, do you know Robot Framework? Selenium WebDriver, be it Java, C# or Python, have been there for many, many years now. But Robot Framework is the new thing, and that is the thing that a lot of organizations are looking if you have a skill to implement something in that area. Now, when it comes to the robot framework, not only are these tests easy to create and they're very modular based, like I talked about here, how we do the test data and so on, all these details or depth of what we do will keep going as we go on, but also the kind of reports that it generates. Very detailed level at the end of every test run, it gives us this HTML reports, what has happened and so on. And it continues to give us tools and ammunition for saying how we set the test variables, how we call each keywords and so on. There are multiple libraries that this specific tool uses. There are standard libraries like the built-in library, operating system based, string based commands and so on. There are also external libraries that help us interact with anything external to this framework, including the Selenium 2 library, which is our big thing here. Selenium 2 library. So Robot Framework as such, let me create a new tool, please. Oops, I think it crashed. So Robot Framework is like an open source framework, all right? And just like Java or be it like Selenium. So any contributor can come and say, you know what, I want to provide something for it. So the Selenium 2 library helps us to use the Selenium commands to be able to work with Robot Framework. What does Selenium do, team? I'm going to ask the audience overall, and you can put your answer in the chat for me, in the question and answer, as to what does a Selenium WebDriver do, basically. It's a question to you all, and I want to know what a Selenium library or a Selenium WebDriver do. Team, use the question and answer section to kindly put your questions, answers to it. It will pull the DOM element and connect to browser. Awesome, Tish. Web application automation. I have no idea about Selenium. Selenium simulates the action in the browser to test web-based applications. I'm just reading out all the answers that I'm getting. Selenium WebDriver. And for those of you who have no idea, that's fine. That's why you're here, and that's what I'm going to help you. It drives the whole script, compare data, provide results. Good point. It's a library that helps you use available methods to automate with. It mimics user behavior. Wow. So look at these kind of answers. When I just think about it, I think I know everything. But when I ask a larger group, I see the varied answers, and some of them are not incorrect. It's a framework. All right. Here is what Selenium WebDriver is all about. All right. Selenium WebDriver, like the word suggests, is driving commands onto a web browser. So let's say if I have a web browser, the browser can be a Chrome, a IE, a Firefox, Safari, and so on. All right. Whatever be it, if I write a specific command, be it in Java, C#, what we're doing with Python, or let's say Ruby on Rails also, it follows these commands, understands what they do, and pass the commands accordingly to be performed on a browser. it drives our web-based application based on what we do. Robot framework with a simple library called Selenium library does exactly that same thing. So there are commands that we can write as a simple commands that will drive this for us additionally. If you go into this Selenium library, you will notice a page with GitHub where all these open source libraries are put in. So you can look at each and everything that has been contributed to. And within this, there's one interesting factor or place that you all should look at. And that's our Selenium library. Where is it? Library documentation, not this one. Here it is. It talks about how we locate elements when it comes to a robot framework command. So let's say I'm talking about an ID or an XPath and so on, or I'm talking to a link. How we first locate the different elements using what we have, and then it talks about the different shortcuts or commands that we can perform. These are the main keywords that Selenium library gives us. Smallest possible keywords. Like for example, you want to click a link, or you want to click a button, or let's say you want to input a text, or you want to open a browser, or you want to select something from a list, and so on. So all the possible regularly used user commands are all mentioned in these shortcuts. So these shortcuts basically give us the entire library of what is readily usable. So if I want to, let's say, input a text, I just have to click on that, look at the format of what is required, and I'll be able to do it. Like input a text is located and the text. Now, if I talk about a simple robot framework script, which I can open quickly, please, for all of you. Something here. All right. If you look at this valid login test case, right? In this, the same thing that you saw earlier in the web application, this is the same thing. It talks about settings as one section. In that, I have a documentation part, and then I have a resource part which says, hey, I'm using a resource.robo. This is another file that is like an external library that I'm using. Now, the main test case for this is valid login. All it says, open browser to login page. That is a command. Then input username and it says demo. But where does it say what is the identifier for it? It doesn't say it here, right? In this same one, now if I open up the resource.robo as a text file, can you see both of them side to side, team? All right. Now, this is an external file we created. In this resource.robo, it basically says it uses a library called Selenium library, the one I just showed. And here are my different variables, which is my local host, which is the browser I want to run on, what is the valid username, valid password, login URL, welcome URL, error URL. You remember open browser to login page, this command out here in the valid login, open browser to login page. It is now expanded to these steps. Open browser at this specific URL using this browser. Maximize the browser window. Set Selenium speed to certain so on. Then login page should be open. Either this command is there here or it is there within our Selenium library. So, for example, open browser. Do you see this here? It is already an existing keyword. It tells me that I can use this as is. All I need to do is say which URL and say which browser. That is all I need to provide for it. So here it tells me open browser, dollar within curl brackets login URL is the name of that specific variable. The other one is $browser is the name of the browser. So all I have to do to change it is instead of Firefox, I write Chrome out here. All right. And then maximize browser window. Do you see a maximize browser window here? You don't, not as a keyword, which is the first thing that you see. But then you should be able to see it within the shortcuts of Selenium to library, what it does. Where is M? There you go. See, maximize browser window. So either this gets picked up from this page or it gets picked up from the existing keywords that come typically as a Selenium library. So we combine them and write as simple commands out here. The only difference as to how we know which is what is a double space or a tab means we're giving some inputs into that function call. Set Selenium speed. I don't see set Selenium speed here. That means that it may be part of the library out here. So let's see where is S out here. And you can see many things here. Do you see set Selenium speed? And it tells us exactly. Sets the delay that is waited for each Selenium command. How long do we expect to wait? So lot of commands where we have to interact with an application, it gives us that ability to wait for that specific amount of time. Now, for example, login page should be open is a user defined keyword. It is not something that is ready already. So it should say title should be login page. This is what the title should be. That is the title of the web application. When we execute this test and when we see what is happening, we get our report, a HTML report which tells me that, hey, something failed somewhere, something passed somewhere, and what are the different tests that passed and so on. To see a detailed log as to where and how, I click on the log.html and it takes me to exactly which one. It tells me overall the test suite failed. In the test suite, I have the go to home page, which was okay. But then when I said Google DevOps and find interact or any commands like this, it failed. Where did it fail? It failed in a specific section and we can drill down and see. It also gives us that basic ability to take screenshots for each step as and how we require. So this is what comes out of the box with the robot framework. For us to understand and how we work with it becomes important. And that is where we need to know a few things. Primarily, we need to know a lot about Selenium WebDriver, and we need to know the scripting as a Python program. Be it Python or Java is fine when it comes to robot framework. But we can customize our framework based on how these tools can behave. So when it comes to robot framework, there are multiple topics that we will discuss about. An introduction to it, though it says day 1, day 2, day 3 and so on, team, almost 2 or 3 sessions can be combined into one session when it comes to our training, because this is very simple concepts and we'll take it more as a project based approach in a very gradual fashion, so it's easy for you to learn and master. We have an introduction to what it is all about, how we do good reporting of test runs, the features of it, and a demo. Then we talk about the installation and configuration. This becomes important, especially for the fact that a lot of times when we work with the command line commands that we have to perform to install a lot of these related tools along with it. How we go about creating our first set of scripts and integrating with Python, the standard libraries that come with it, some of the data structures, how we want to execute the conditional flow, either a for loop or an if-else statement. What if a test case behaves like this? what if it behaves otherwise, or if we want to loop through a specific set of test case steps repeatedly over and over, how do we do it? Then we talk about the Selenium 2 library and all the most used commands within it. And we talk about the data-driven and keyword-driven framework approach within it. How do we give those commands? Towards the end, we talk about how do we do setup and tear down for each robot test, how we tag the different test suites within it, how we go about understanding the reports and customizing them for our basic projects, a little bit of continuous integration, and how we do parallel test execution using Selenium Grid. So these are the primary topics when it comes to robot framework. But to be able to do that, we need to know our basics of Selenium WebDriver. This is element identification using XPath, CSS, ID, link text, and name are very simple, but XPath and CSS becomes very important because that is how we program things. However, Selenium IDE and basics of automation work, and how we take our files from WebDriver from IDE to Selenium WebDriver. This becomes very important as well, team. How we migrate our tests from one platform to the other, that's what we will try and master at a high level. Okay, WebDriver basic commands. This is what we will learn. And then when it comes to Python programming, it's a complete set of understanding this as a programming language. So if I go to ITeLearn.com and we look at some of our online courses, we already have a computer programming with Python training online. This is all the different subjects that we work with. Within this, you will see the complete programming or understanding of how the Python programming has evolved. This. Okay, there you go. So here we start with installing Python, some of the basics of how we work with Python, the if statement and for loop, how we create function basics, how we use lists, files, input and output. We look at exception handling, classes and object-oriented approach, regular expression, and how we work with an Excel sheet or any other external file using it, and some of the frequently used library commands. So we'll cover all these topics along with, let me put these also. So we have these topics along with what I've just mentioned. That will become fundamentally what it is. So when it comes to robot framework, here are the different topics that we're going to cover within robot framework. So that's some of the complete advanced topics, team, that we're looking at. And there are a few advanced concepts also within robot framework that I've not put it in yet. But you'll see all of this being covered in the training that we're going to have. Okay, there you go. All right, team. So this is what it is. Overall, I'm looking at about 25 hours of training, and then you will need to spend at least 50 hours of practicals and projects at your end to be able to master. So while I teach for 1 hour, it will take you at least 2 hours to practice the same concepts at your end to make sure things are working correctly and then being able to implement them. So that's the orientation session, and that's what I wanted to really speak about today, team. Any questions that the audience has, I would love to answer them from now. So team, feel free to ask questions. So I got the first question from one of the members saying, is that free? I don't know which one is free. The training is not free. The training is a paid training. I don't know if the pricing has been put up on the pricing page already or not. But the fact that this is a paid training. We're going to have a couple of demo sessions. After that, it is going to be a completely paid training. So if you look at Python by itself is $100, but then Robot Framework, I don't think we have put anything out here on the website yet. I will be publishing the pricing. It's gonna be on a similar lines as in Selenium with Java or C#. $450 for the video based access only, $500 if someone also wants to attend the live training. These are the regular fees that we have with ITeLearn. It's going to be on the same fee level. How is this different than QTP? It is totally different because at the end of the day, if you look at it, it's the same thing as automation testing tool. But the fact that it comes built in with a lot of features that we have, and it is an open source. So Selenium WebDriver is an open source platform, but it comes with certain expectations that the user has to do the programming at their end. Robot Framework takes Selenium library and it implements it over that. Why Python, not Java? Good question. So Robot Framework as a programming, as a concept, you will notice that most of these libraries that have been implemented are based on Python or Java. So you have both the abilities. But since I already have many tutorials on ITeLearn regarding Java, I believe that this could be a good opportunity for me to do it along with Python. Since already most of the concepts are there with Java, I want to do this time with Python. I'm interested to integrate Robot Framework with APM. Will I get any help on this if I take this course? So that is a very specific requirement. When it comes to specific requirements team, if you're only interested in 1-2 things, then do not take this training because it is easy for you to find a solution for that and do it. But if you want to build from the foundation level and go to a very advanced thing, then you have to take this training where you're not sure about the programming, you're at a beginner level, or you don't know how to work with the robot framework. It is very simple. You go to a new place. Let's say you go to visit pyramids in Egypt, right? You can always go by yourself and say, hey, you know what? I want to see the pyramid. Well, here's the pyramid. Here's how it is. Take a few pictures and come back. But then when you go with a guide, the guide is going to help you tour the site and tell you concepts and things that is unheard about or you're not aware. And those important things is what you want to treasure with you. This comes more for your career, how you plan to do it. Would this be a challenge for people with non-programming background? Good question. So I would say it would not, because the way I will take it from the ground level up is going to tell you exactly how it's going to be different when it comes to learning any of these concepts, be it the Selenium WebDriver, Python basics programming, or Robot Framework. We start with the ground level and then we go very advanced with it. All right. Is this robot framework really recommended for automating a large number of tests, that is in regression testing, like automating approximately 5,000 test cases? Is it recommended or not? It's very simple. here is how I look at it. Okay, let's say you go to buy a car. All right, you look at the different cars available in the market. What will you look at? You look at the power of the engine, the make, the model, how many miles per gallon will you get with that specific vehicle. And let's say if you choose to go with something more economical for you, you may say that I want a complete hybrid or a completely electric car that you can power in and so on, like a Tesla, or you want to go with what's the Toyota Prius, right? So it is how you use it. It is the car can do everything. The car is built to do everything. But then some cars need fuel stops that will give you, let us say, every 200 miles you have to stop for a fuel change or for a recharge of the battery or other way. So for example, when I bought my Harley, which is IN 883, people used to say to me that, you know what, it's got a very small tank. If you going for long rides, then you're the one who's going to be stuck with it for frequent refueling. But the others will keep cruising because it's a small tank capacity. From the perspective of a robot framework or Selenium and Python, I think you can do whatever you wish to. One of the biggest beauties of this is how it generates the inbuilt log files in the reports and how it measures what you're doing. And the second big thing being the fact that how easy it is to write any given test case. That is the main purpose. It is making it much more simpler for the end user. That is the reason this has become famous. What is the difference between robot framework and gauge framework? NT, honestly, I have not come across gauge framework yet. But then now that you've told about it, I can look at it. So gauge framework. Let's see what this is while I look at it. Just for your information team, I am also building a framework by ourselves within ITeLearn along with a great set of trainees that we have. And that framework, I'm calling it as AnyArt. And this is coming up very well with what we're doing as a team. And we are doing some amazing kind of framework overall. So when we talk about the implementation, we're talking the 4 different phases within it. Requirements document. So we're talking about the entire implementation steps. We're talking about how we do setup and run, execution, results, help, and about, and how we come up with the complete UI for this. So that's something we're developing, which is very similar to how Robot Framework has been built as well. So Gauge Framework, I've really not seen. Is this the one? Getgauge.io? NT? All right, cool. I'll look into it, but then I can tell you what it is. Test automation you'll actually like. Simple, collaborative, adaptable. Get started, contribute. Very nice. Looks good. At the start, it looks good. Data-driven execution, environment tools. Get started fast, simple syntax. And I think they're all trying to, oh, it's part of ThoughtWorks. Okay, so ThoughtWorks is the company which is primarily doing it. So it's come out of ThoughtWorks, so that makes a lot of sense. Because I don't know how many of you are aware, but ThoughtWorks is the company behind a lot of these successful automation tools. So it comes through that. Okay, nice. The it's called Gauge, right? Get Gauge. Okay, I'll look into it, but looks they seem to be doing the same thing, but just the fact when it comes to any kind of a new idea, right? There are 2 things I always emphasize. How did Facebook go and purchase WhatsApp for almost 19 billion US dollars? It's 19 billion US dollars. That's like 19,000 million US dollars. That's a huge amount. How did Facebook go about buying WhatsApp? Just because The app looks good, is it? And it's functional? No, it's only for two reasons. It is for the number of users, how many users are there, and how much of usage is happening on it. How many people are really using it? Or did they just download it to and install it to later some point uninstall, right? So the stickiness of the users. So how many millions of users do we have? And then how regularly are they using? Let's say they're using, each of them are using for 30 minutes every day. This gives the popularity for any application. It's not about being a web-based or a mobile-based app, but any kind of a program or application is this. So that way, Robot Framework has picked up some good momentum because of the timing and the fact of how simple it's created things. All right, let's see what else. Will this help in automating biometric fingerprint sensor on mobile? All right. How do I answer this? It's very simple. I mean, how do I answer this? This is the question, guys, that I've got. Will this help in automating biometric fingerprint sensor on mobile? Like I'm not an iPhone user. I've quit iPhone long back and I moved to Android myself. But if you're talking about automating that, it's a very, very specific requirement. When it comes to specific requirement, don't go for a general training. Find that. Google that and see if it will help you. A lot of times I see users coming in and they still want to have specific solutions. This is an advanced training, guys. So it will talk to you about everything that we will do within it. But it may not specifically give you a solution for something. So if you have a specific need, go and search for a solution for that. If you want overall incremental learning, that's when we do this. So unfortunately, I'm sorry, Ramadevi, I don't have an answer for you if it will do that or not. All right. I meant, okay, so another question is, I meant why companies use Python, not Java. See, here's the thing. Java came about almost 2 decades back, right? Just over 2 decades ago. 94, 95, around that time is when Java came to the market. And it's been evolving. Then all the other programming languages started coming. Python is a much more simpler, more powerful programming language that has come more recently. And it made things much more easier for a developer, especially when it comes to web-based applications. Be it Python, Ruby on Rails, AngularJS, or PHP, and so on. Other than that, it's a choice of a company at the end of it. Do they want to go with the licensed Microsoft versions of C# and .NET, or they want to go with more freeware like Java and Python and so on, and invest for the servers accordingly? That's the biggest difference. How will this 25 hours program run? Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll meet every day for 1 hour. I'm going to do a live lecture for 1 hour. You're going to go through those sessions every day, and you'll also spend at least a couple of hours from your end additionally to practice on it. Do you have any session for pure Python programming for automation? So NT, yes, we already have some recorded sessions for Python. If I look at from a Python programming overall, here are some of the topics that I look into. Not what we're trying to do is not learn Python to become a Python developer, but to learn Python to be a great automation test engineer. That is our intent behind learning Python. All right. So from that perspective, we have these tutorials readily available. When it comes to art training, I'm going to take the same approach, but it may not be the same length. So this is probably about overall 6-7 hours tutorials. Maybe in 4-5 hours, we will cover most of the basic concepts of Python and then implement that as we go along with Robot Framework. For people like me who are trying to change career, will this training open a job opportunity with no experience? Well, listen, when it comes to IT industry, right, people are looking for skills. They're looking for experience. They're looking for some kind of a degree that you can hold or a combination of either. Either you have an amazing skill that the industry wants readily, or you're someone who's got a great certificate or degree with you that's backing you. What we do at ITeLearn is give you that experience, give you that kind of a knowledge where you can sit and talk within an interview saying exactly what you've learned or what you know. That is what we will try and accomplish. All right. So team, I've got hopefully most of the questions answered and we are almost towards the end of the session. So any few final questions before we end the meeting, please? Are we able to create our own framework with repository and all? Yes, Mohammed, we are able to do that. That's the whole intent, that towards the end of it, we want to be able to create our own framework. Are we able to customize it and implement? Framework is nothing but a built up, it's like a skeleton, a human skeleton. We know exactly where the skull is, where the arms are, where the limbs are, where the spinal cord is going to go, everything. And we know where within your rib cage will your heart go and so on. It's a framework. It's a consistent methodology in which, for example, God has made humans. And now we need to see what kind of a body structure we put to it and how we give the color of the skin, color of the hair, color of the eyes and so on. That's what will be the differentiator. So all frameworks will come with the basic methodology. Implementation is what will change. It is an existing framework. It is all about implementing it, knowing it and implementing. So team, the day one and day two demos, I'm not sure which one I should start with, because I can start with the robot framework as a demo or Python or Selenium WebDriver, either of them. So a couple of days are definitely free demos for everyone to evaluate how it is. So one of those things I'm going to do it, and hopefully by end of this week or next week, we're going to start with the demo sessions and you're going to start, you'll be able to participate with it. Can you please confirm if this course is for people who are new to programming? This course is absolutely for someone who's starting at a beginner level. Even if you do not know ABCD of what is automation testing or programming language or frameworks, you're at a good place to start. There's no question about that. Okay. Do you know the timings for this training? As of now, we're looking at 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Pacific. But when the live session starts, we will communicate to you. Worst case, it will become 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. How can we answer in an interview what kind of framework you create? How can you answer? So once you go through this whole thing, you'll be able to answer, team. In fact, if you go to ITeLearn.com, there's some very, very nice tutorials and free sessions that we have, especially on this framework concept. So I've done a lot of sessions on Selenium, on agile testing, and there's this one all about automation frameworks. This specific video should give you some amazing idea about what kind of framework and how and so on. So this one I'll send to all. Did you all receive this link that I just sent of this page? Watch this video, guys. It's gonna be really eye-opening as to what frameworks are all about. Even on the weekends, no, it's Monday to Friday. I do not work on weekends myself, and so we don't have any classes at that time. Once registered, will we have access to course which is purely for Selenium or pure Python? You will have access to Selenium, Selenium WebDriver, Python, and the robot framework, and whatever new sessions that we are doing. That is what you'll have access to. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. If you have further questions, feel free to write to us at learn@iteLearn.com, and I'll be glad to have my team answering some of them. And join for the demo sessions once we start. I'll show you how we take the programming and make it easy. And that's going to be interesting for you to watch. And once you're there, then we can continue from there on. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Have a great week ahead, and we'll see you back for the day 1 and day 2 demo. Take care, everyone. Bye then.